Well, good morning. How's everyone? So I'm doing things a little differently today. I'll explain that in a minute. But it's mostly technical stuff. Precepts incense, samadhi incense, wisdom incense, liberation incense, cloud of lighted incense, pouring into the Dharma realms, offering to the highest teachers of the 10 directions. I respectfully bow to the incense cloud bodhisattva. I respectfully bow to the incense cloud bodhisattva. I respectfully bow to the incense cloud bodhisattva. I respectfully bow to all directions of space, all realms, past, present, and future, all Buddhas, the honored Dharma, the enlightened Sangha, the permanent three treasures. I respectfully bow to our own teacher, Sakyamuni Buddha, the future born Maitreya Buddha, great wisdom, Manjushri Bodhisattva, great practice, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, Dharma protector Bodhisattvas, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas assembled at the great holy mountain. I respectfully bow to the great love, great compassion, Amitabha Buddha of the Western Paradise, great compassion, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, great vow, Siddhigarbha Bodhisattva, great power, Mahastamaprata Bodhisattva, all the Bodhisattvas in the great pure ocean. Okay, good. I'm glad you can hear me. So I'm my computer, the one that I normally do, died on Thursday. Not completely, but I was working along, everything was fine. And then all of a sudden it went blank. And I said, oh, the power's gone out. This was right after one of our usual thunderstorms. And then I realized that no, all the other power was on. So I thought, well, maybe it'd been one of those things where we'd had a little surge and it had turned off. And so I tried turning it back on and nothing happened. So it's in the shop. So I'm using Michelle's Chromebook today, and which is interesting. So that's why I was wondering. I wanted to make sure that all the technical stuff was working. So the other thing that's a little different is that all of the Dharma talks that I was planning, that I had outlined or made notes about or whatever, are on a hard drive, which is at the computer shop. So that's okay. So I'm going to talk today about something that involves the principle of not knowing, and I don't know what I'm going to talk about. not exactly, but less than usually. So it fits, and also, I mean, life is one lesson in impermanence after another, and certainly right now with all of the stuff going on in the world, it's even more the case, and these little things serve as reminders that once we think we've gotten comfortable, something's going to change. So that's true about all kinds of things. Anyway, so I want to share something with you. So this book is called The Dude and the Zen Master, and it's by Jeff Bridges and Bernie Glassman. So give you a little background. I try to keep learning. I mean, I know how to practice in a way that suits me, but I try to teach other people how to practice also, and everybody comes at things in a different way. And, I try to meet people where they stand and not expect them to come to me necessarily. So there's a lot of different gates to go through to get to the Dharma, right? So I try to familiarize myself with them. And also, I like to be connected to sort of the greater Buddhist community. And so I've done a couple of things. I've been doing the Commit to Sit program with the New York Zen Center for Contemplative Care, which I've done that before. What's interesting about that organization is that they have chaplaincy programs and stuff. So they're very much plugged into the idea of Buddhism and Zen in chaplaincy type of situations. So I'm doing some stuff with them right now. And I decided I would do some looking into the peacemakers. And I think I mentioned this in another Dharma talk earlier, but the Zen Peacemakers International is an organization that was founded by Bernie Glassman, Roshi, and I have a sort of a connection to it. If you look at my lineage chart, there's me, and then Ginjo Gallagher, and then Mitsunen Nordstrom, and then Bernie Glassman, but it uses his Dharma name, and then Maizumi Roshi. So I thought, well, this would be a good time for me to kind of look into that side of the family tree, the Dharma family, that is. And so I've been spending some time with Zen Peacemakers programs and done some meetings and that kind of thing. So part of this has been to do a little bit of reading on that side, and someone had loaned me this book or given it to me. I'm not real sure. I'm not sure who gave it to me, so I'm not sure if they meant for me to keep it or if they wanted it back. I don't remember the conversation. If you're watching this and you want your book back, let me know. But it's been in my stack of things to read when I got around to, and so this is that time that I get around to that. And it's really about the concept of the tenets of Zen peacemakers, which are kind of interesting and which I want to do more work with. I'm not qualified to speak on them as spiritual practices, really, except as they touch on other things that I've done. And they're pretty foundational, but it's interesting the way he's settled on these three things, which are not knowing, bearing witness, and taking action. And so he talks a lot about that in here. I want to read you a passage from this book. It's Bernie Glassman speaking. Glassman was Jewish. He passed away not too terribly long ago. I never got to meet him, unfortunately. But anyway, he was, he was sort of culturally Jewish, and a Zen master, and never really, we don't find those things in conflict. You can be Christian or Jewish or Muslim or whatever you want to do, and still practice Buddhism as far as we're concerned. And so he starts off by saying, I'm Buddhist, but as you know, I'm also Jewish. The Hebrew word for peace is shalom, and I'm not Jewish. I'm going to mispronounce these Hebrew words, I'm sorry. Many people know that word, but what they may not know is that the root of shalom is shalom, which means whole. To make something shalom, to make peace, is to make whole. There's a Jewish mystical tradition that at the time of the creation, God's light filled a cup. But the light was so strong that the cup shattered into fragments scattered throughout the universe. And the role of the righteous person, the mensch, is to bring the fragments back and connect them to restore the cup. And that's what I mean by peace. For me, peace means whole. The Hebrew shalom is peacemaker, as in the verse, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall inherit the earth. They shall work to restore the fragments into a whole. And in Zen, as you know, our practice is to realize that wholeness and interconnectedness of life. Um, I read that and I was so affected by it that I had to put the book down and just sit with it for about 15, 20 minutes. Um, this idea from the Jewish tradition that God's light filled a cup, and the light was so strong that it shattered it into fragments that scattered, and the role of the righteous person. Yeah, and you could say from that, I mean, we attach all kinds of meaning to this idea of righteousness. You say that the religious practitioner, the person who's trying to practice whatever religion they're practicing, their role is to bring the fragments back and connect them to restore the cup. I just found that very profound and a really interesting comment on what it means to be a person of faith. You know, what it means to practice a religion, which is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, you know, as a not just as a Buddhist teacher, but as a chaplain and all of those things, is what does it mean to be a person of faith? What does it mean to practice a religion? So I kind of dug into this a little bit more after I read that. I was thinking about this more. You know, Glassman's comment, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall inherit the earth," that comes from the Beatitudes, and it's actually, I don't think it's correct. I didn't think it was correct. I went and looked it up. So this is a Bible. I got this when I was a little kid. My grandparents gave it to me. Christmas 1962. So basically, I guess I was learning how to read. They figured it was time for me to get a Bible, because I would have been 6 years old at the time. And so, but anyway, I'm not going to become a preacher, but I'm going to read some of the Beatitudes to you because I think it's relevant to this conversation. And this is from Matthew, St. Matthew 4, St. Matthew 5, actually. "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." So Bernie got it wrong. Although I think these might be in Luke too. Maybe it's different in Luke. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's been a long time since I was reading the Bible a whole lot. But I like this idea, you know, that part of our role in life as religious, as practitioners of a religious way, is to restore the whole. We talk about oneness a lot in Buddhism, you know, and this idea of interconnectedness and everything is all part of the same thing. And a lot of the times that's talked about as if it were something that arises out of years of determined meditation and continuous practice and all of that. And suddenly one day, there's this crack in the cosmic egg, and you realize that you're part of everything. And I've been thinking again about what it means to teach, you know, and what it means to minister, and what it means to be a practitioner. And, you know, everybody's not going to have an opportunity to do endless practice or continuous practice for a long period of time, for years and years and stuff like that. And yet, we need to be able to realize this idea of gathering the fragments together to restore the cup, you know, of realizing oneness as something that we do, and not necessarily as something that happens because we had, one of these, enlightenment experiences that the Zen masters talk about, where the body and mind falls away, as well as the body and mind and others, and this traceless enlightenment goes on forever and ever. and that's beautiful. And if you can have that experience, that's great. But most people are going to go try to live their lives and make it through day to day, and wear their masks to work so they don't infect other people, and all of those things that is involved in living your life. And so, how do you do that? And how do you experience that being a righteous person, as Bernie's talking about, the person whose job is to recreate the whole, right? Not to realize oneness, but to recreate the whole. And I thought that was really, really an interesting and profound question. So, and something else occurred to me when I went to look up the Beatitudes. The first one is, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And I started thinking, what does this mean? So the obvious thing to do would have been to ask one of the Christian ministers that I know, but that's way too easy for me. I went and looked to see what scholars had written about it and that kind of thing. And I found something very interesting. It means not knowing. Some of the, if you talk to a Baptist preacher or Catholic priest about that, they might answer that differently. But when I look at it as a Buddhist, and I look at these things as Buddhists, and I see what the scholars say, I realize that it means, to be poor in spirit means that you don't come in already carrying a bunch of ideas about your own rightness. There's an old Zen story, that I've told. Some of you have heard this a bunch of times, I'm sure, from me, if not from other places as well, about the samurai who decides he really wants to learn about tea. He's been invited to a tea with someone, and in Japan, tea is people refer to it as tea ceremony. It's really kind of a ritualized drinking of tea, and I think the Japanese name for it translates as something like making hot water for tea. But the whole process is very very formal, and it really involves being in the moment, being in the sensory experience of being in the moment with one another, and that sort of thing. The dog is lying across the base of this thing, so it starts to wobble. It's not like magic or anything. It's just the dog. Anyway, in the story, the samurai comes in and says, I've been invited to tea. I need to learn tea. I need to learn how to do this. Teach me, and teach me right away. I don't have a lot of time. And so the tea master starts out by saying, I can't teach you. I can't teach you how to do tea. And the samurai, pulls out his sword and threatens to kill him and all this kind of stuff, the way these stories go. And the tea master finally says, all right, fine, sit down. I'll do what I can. And so the samurai sits down, and the tea master makes the hot water and makes the tea, which is this powdery stuff. You've probably seen it. It's stirred together with a whisk and all of that. And he puts the cup in front of the samurai, and he starts to pour the tea into the cup. And he pours and pours and pours, and it fills up, and then it overflows. It gets tea all over the swordsman's lap. And so, of course, this makes the guy angry, and he says, threatens to kill the tea master again. And the tea master says, look, the reason I did that, he says, you were like that teacup. I can't teach you anything because you're already full. If you want to learn anything, you got to empty yourself out. So I think this is what it means to be poor in spirit. You don't come in with a whole lot of ideas about what's right. You come in open to what is, and so you come in not knowing. So there's another Zen story, the koan about a monk who shows up in a monastery and to stay the night. And the master invites him in to talk, and the master says, well, what is it you're doing? And he explains he's going on this pilgrimage that involved visiting certain monasteries in a certain area. And the master goes, oh, okay. He says, well, what's the meaning of making this pilgrimage? And the monk says, I don't know. And the master says, oh, not knowing is most intimate. In other words, it's good to not know. When you come in knowing, thinking you know what this pilgrimage is all about, you're going to miss it, right? If you come in going, I'm going to make this pilgrimage and be open to what it teaches me, then that's when it will actually have value. So, this idea of not knowing is something that we can all work with. You encounter, even in Buddhism, you encounter people who go, oh, well, this is the way we do this. This is the sutra we chant. This is the translation we use. This is the sutra that we think is important, and so on. And as soon as you start attaching to things like that, you're starting to miss the point of it, right? You need to make yourself poor in spirit, empty out your cup, and then you can realize what these teachings have to offer to you. But then the third one is to take action. Remember, I said there are 3 tenets in Zen peacemakers: not knowing, bearing witness. You can't bear witness if you're already blind by your own preconceptions, and then taking action. So it can be difficult, these things. We live in, I looked at Facebook this morning, and I see posts from people that I've known for a long time whose minds are going in very strange directions these days, I think, and it's really hard. If you ask me, how do I deal with a friend who seems to be caught up in a political position that I can't tolerate, I can't listen to? I don't know, honestly, because I have difficulty with it too, So part of it then is to bear witness to your own stuff. What goes on in my mind when these things come up, and to what extent can I let go of the things that I'm clinging to? That doesn't necessarily mean I got to adopt their point of view or be okay with it or anything like that. But how can I stop being, clinging to my own stuff and be open to what else is? So I think one of the things that we're seeing right now a lot is people wanting things to get back to normal. And I totally get that. I'd like for things to get back to normal too. I don't think they ever will. I'm thinking even in terms of religion, something came up in my Facebook feed the other day. It was a picture of me and Dr. Chow, and I think it was at my ordination, the day that I ordained, and then stayed for services after my ordination. And I was singing with Dr. Chow, and I was thinking, man, I'll be glad when everything gets back to normal, so I can go back and do that again. But everything's not going to be back to normal. There never was normal in the first place, right? Everything changes. So our job then is to find the fragments and put them wherever they are and put them together. So things will have changed. Even the way we do this changes. I was thinking about the other day, I was talking to somebody about how religion itself has changed and how its practices have changed, and how like there are organizations out there who are already doing a lot of stuff online, already doing a lot of remote meetings and that kind of thing. And so for them, this has basically meant they get more people showing up. But for a lot of churches and temples and things like that, it's been starting anew. And it was sort of a wonder, like the organizations that are real dependent on retreats to keep going with what they're doing. What are they doing now? Places like the Vipassana centers and Insight Meditation Society, which is real dependent on retreats and stuff. Because it's really hard to do those online, and you're not going to get the participation. So what do you do with this? And really, what does it matter? And I started thinking, well, what if over the course of the next few years, when COVID is over, and then things have happened that we're sort of incorporating, and because I don't want to stop live streaming just because I go back to White Sands, so figuring that kind of stuff out and that kind of thing. So what is important? What does this thing do? What does this practice do? And how can we use this not just to make ourselves better people or to make ourselves more comfortable or less stressed out or whatever? How can we do this to make society better? And what does this mean? And I started thinking about this thing that I encountered as doing religious studies generally, and there's a stages of development, and I forget the theologian's name who came up with this, but Fowler. I can't remember his first name. I think it's Robert Fowler, but I'm not sure. If you look for Fowler's stages of spiritual development, you'll find this. And he's talking kind of generally, like what happens with people as they become aware of religion, and how does that affect the way they see life. And so the first stage is really from birth to like age 2 or so, when you're not really processing things in sort of a cognitive language kind of way so much. It's really all about, hot and cold, feels good, doesn't feel good, hungry and full, those kinds of things. So that's kind of where your mind is. And then there's this stage where you start to have this kind of intuitive sense that there's something outside of yourself. And so you start trying to make sense out of that. And then there's a place where you start to develop your idea about God. You become aware of things like God and afterlife. You become aware that there was something before you and there will be something after you, and you start trying to make sense out of that. And so I remember when my son was young, and he was playing with a friend, and with like little action figures, and I could hear him and his friend talking and doing the voices of the action figures, and one of them said something about being God, and I'm going, oh no, he thinks God is like the Power Rangers or whatever. We need to do something about religious education. At some point you go, okay, you need to learn a little bit more. And so kind of the fourth stage, and this is the one that most people get to when they become religious people, is when you kind of start to think. The third stage is where you start to believe in authorities. You start to believe in books, right? This is our book. No, this is our book, right? That kind of thing. This is my teacher. I listen to this preacher or whatever, I practice this religion, and so on. And so you're looking outside yourself for authority. You're looking to certain sources and saying, this is the way I access this. And then the fourth is where you realize that you're kind of stuck in a box, right? So a lot of people never get beyond that third stage. The people who are always sort of, well, this is the word of God and that's it. Those people are they've found this one stage, they're comfortable there, that's where they're going to stay. A lot of times when people hit like college age, they start going, I feel a little hung up there. I want something a little bit more than that. And so they start to become seekers again. And so the next stage then is that they start becoming aware of things on a little deeper level. So things like when you read the Lotus Sutra, or when you hear talk about the Lotus Sutra, and you start to think about these things where the relative and the absolute, and you become aware of those two processes and how they're different and the same. And so on, and you start to realize this connection in a bigger way to something that's really larger than yourself. Then that can happen then at this next stage. And the final stage is realizing oneness, is realizing when you can hear a teaching from the Bible and a teaching from the Dhammapada and a teaching from the Guru Granth Sahib of the Sikh tradition and so on, and you find truth there because you realize that these people, they got to this point where they could see oneness, interconnectedness, grounded being, all those things start to become a way of your life, then that's that final stage. And to get there, you have to not know, right? You have to be open to the other stuff. You got to realize I'm stuck in this box. I got to step outside. I got to be able to see what is revealed to me, and then I got to move into that space, and that's that taking action part from a spiritual level. Move into the space that's created by not knowing and bearing witness. And again, don't go calling Zen peacemakers and saying, Sensei Morris says this is what you guys do, because I'm seeing this from my perspective. I'm not qualified to speak for them. But those three things, I think, are really nice ways to bring awareness to our practice, and that this is really about the way we live our lives and not about, bowing a certain way or reciting sutras a certain way or whatever. So, the 6 stages are not, those are not etched into stone. They're different theologians have criticized them in certain ways, that they're not particularly not really linear and all of that. But I think they're things that are useful, as we consider our own spiritual life and where we're going with our practice, where do we want to go. There's this idea of, the religion as a raft that carries you across the river to the other side. Once you get to the other side, you don't need to carry the raft around with you. You're going to get to another river eventually, but there's going to be stuff there that will get you to the other side of that one as well. So anyway, so that's kind of what I had in mind today. And so I'm going to stand up and look at the laptop that I'm using, or actually Michelle's Chromebook, and see if you've had any questions. And if you've had questions that you haven't written them, go ahead and write them now, because I'll be able to read them theoretically. So I don't see any questions. I see a lot of people say good morning back to you. Yeah, sin humor. Religion should be funny. If it's not funny, you're taking it too seriously. It's not good for you. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions showing up on the chat, so we will go ahead and do the dedication. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, existing right here now, and offering flowers, candles, and incense, hearing the Dharma and training the mind, great merit is attained. We dedicate this merit to the great Master Sakyamuni Buddha, the all-pervading and everlasting 3 treasures, the 16 guardians and all protectors of their Dharma and their relations throughout space and time, to all ancestors of this Sangha and all beings in the Dharma world. May penetrating light dispel the darkness of ignorance. Let all karma be resolved in the mind, flower, bloom, and eternal spring. May the Dharma body maintain strength and health, and years of life be lengthened for all teachers of this Sangha. May their vows be fully realized. May they live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma. We pray for all those suffering from violence and those who grieve for them, for those living in oppression, for those who are imprisoned who should be free, from all refugees from violence, hunger, and catastrophe, made or natural. We especially pray for the health and well-being of those suffering from diseases of body, mind, or spirit, all those working toward the healing of those afflictions. We pray for those suffering from COVID-19, those ministering to them, and to those grieving for those lost to this pandemic. May they be serene through all their troubles, and may we realize the enlightened way together. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Naha, Pranya, Paramita. Three bows. out to you. And thank you for being here. Hope you have a great rest of your Sunday and a good day. And I will see you Wednesday, if not before.